So I appreciate everybody being here. My name is Kimo Alameda. I'll be moderating this awesome panel, I call it All-Star Panel. Good to see a lot of familiar faces, a lot of mental health advocates, substance abuse advocates. It's really, really good to see you folks here. Because yes, mental health and substance abuse is part of health. And for a long time we had to, that was like maybe a good 20 years we had to try to get that pushed across to get people to realize that mental health is health. And then you kind of stop separating the brain and the body, especially when mental health is like all over our body. Where is? In fact, let me ask that question before we start. Where is mental health? This side. Anybody? Give me something. Where is it? Where is it? What would you say? What would you say? In your mind? Okay, how about this side? Where else? Where is it? In your heart?
In the heart.
In your soul, maybe? Where else?
Yeah.
Could it be outside of your body? Community. Thank you. Yeah, how about this side? One more. Could it be in church? Could it be a church? Yeah.
In your family.
Could be in your family. Thank you. Yes. So here's the deal, right? Yeah, it's everywhere. And that's the key. One person, when I shared that, they said, "Oh, it's in your wallet." Oh, that's true too. Could be in your wallet, mental health. So mental health I think is everywhere, just like I think health is everywhere. And sometimes we get locked into our own discipline. So if you're a psychiatrist, you think mental health is only in the brain. But if you think it's only in the brain, then your interventions are probably only medication. If you're a family therapist, you think it's only in the family, right? So I think it's important that we go out of our discipline and we just kind of expand to look at mental health as being everywhere. So we have an all-star panel. We have Kaylee Aquero, Dr. Kaylee, who's here. Give her a round of applause. Our child and adolescent division kind of worked up the ranks and now kind of oversees pretty much all the outer islands. Yes, whole state. Okay, see, stepping it up. And then, so Kaylee will talk a little bit about state services, kind of from the child and adolescent mental health division. And then we'll turn it over to Claren, Dr. Claren, thank you for being here. And Claren has also a nice history as well, and now is the CEO and also one of the few CEOs that also practice as well at COCO, and she'll go into that. And we have our famous Dr. Kevin Kans. Dr. Kevin's a physician, but also an addiction specialist, like internationally known, and so it's been really helpful in us getting started with the fentanyl task force. Just been an advocate way back since 40 years. Married a local girl, and his state is one of our own Kamaina. And then, of course, Dr. Hannah Pita. Thank you. We're also going to talk a little bit about the substance abuse, mental health, and you see that together too. So without further ado, I'd like to just have them talk a little bit about, like maybe 10, 15 minutes on what they provide, what kind of services that comes out of their area of focus, what is there's any eligibility requirements, and then just kind of lay the the groundwork, and then we'll turn it over to you folks for Q&A. So we got a good half an hour for Q&A. All right. So you feel free to use the mic, Dr. Katie, or project.
I think it's okay. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, thank you. Like Kimo said, I'm the acting administrator for the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Division. We're part of the Hawai'i State Department of Health. We have close to 200 employees statewide, and the bulk of our work is done out of family guidance centers. We have 7 family guidance centers across the state, and most of what the family guidance centers provide is care coordination, intensive care coordination, linkage, and referral. And our entire service array is contracted service providers who provide the actual services to children and adolescents. The kids that we serve have the more serious emotional and behavioral disturbances. And so our service array is really pretty intensive services, everything from intensive in-home services all the way to psychiatric hospitalization. So the bulk of the kids that we serve, we're serving them because we are a Quest behavioral health plan carve-out. And so over 90% of our children and adolescents and their families are eligible through our services through their Quest behavioral health plan. So for kids to be eligible for our services, anyone can make a referral to us, but of course we won't screen a child or an adolescent for eligibility without their parents' permission. And to back up, if you have any questions about our services, our website is actually pretty great. We actually have somebody young and wonderful creating our website, so it's kind of the better government websites, I think. Child and Adolescent Mental Health Division. So people can apply online for our services, and really when we're, all of our eligibility determinations are done by clinicians, psychologists, or psychiatrists, and we really are very lucky because we have a wealth of child psychologists and psychiatrists working in family guidance centers across the state. So primarily we're serving kids who are 3 through 17 who have a mental health diagnosis, and for us, most diagnoses are qualifying. The only diagnoses that are not qualifying by themselves are if they have a developmental delay, neurocognitive delay, or substance abuse by itself. Although we're all people who work in behavioral health, you know that that's pretty rare that somebody is abusing substances and not also struggling with some mental health issues. And then what we're really looking to see is, did that mental health diagnosis impair their daily functioning moderately or severely? So we provide the mental health assessment, we establish what we think their diagnosis is and that it's having a pretty significant impact on their daily functioning, and then one of our clinicians will find them eligible, depending on where they live. That family guidance center will assign a care coordinator to them, and that care coordinator, I think, is really what makes our system different than other systems, because that person is then that child and family's person. They're the hub of all the communication. They're building a relationship with the child, with the family. They're trying to support the child and the parents. They're helping them learn how to navigate the system, which for anyone who's tried to navigate a government system, that can be intimidating, it can be confusing. They're helping to make sure that all the people that are involved with the child's care, so different than adult care, kids are in school, so there's school personnel that are helping them. Sometimes they're in the child welfare system, so we need to make sure that we're working with child welfare. Sometimes they're in the judicial system, and so we need to make sure that we're working with juvenile justice. And of course, we're working with their parents. And so it really requires that all of the adults that are in the kitchen around this young person are talking to each other and not working at cross purposes. If we're doing in-home family services, but child welfare is saying this child can't be in their home, that doesn't make sense already. We need to be talking to each other and coordinating care, and that's really what our care coordinators do and what makes it, I think, kind of special compared to other places. I think one of the things that makes Camden great is we have a lot of focus on data-driven decision-making. Part of that is using treatments and things that are supported by evidence, but that's really not all of it. I think more importantly, we're trying to get everybody that we work with to consider data when they're making decisions at all levels. So that could be around a specific client, that could be, treatment level decisions, that could be decisions that a family guidance center is making when it's trying to determine how best to serve its community. And that could be decisions that I'm trying to make as the administrator. And so we're really trying to beef up the ways that we collect information, the ways that we know things, and the ways that we make decisions. I would say the thing that we are really worried about right now the most, two things. One is during COVID, our census, the amount of kids and families that we serve went way down. Part of that is because the people who know about our services or the people that usually encourage families to apply for our services, didn't have eyes on kids. Part of it is that for some kids, they were just very isolated, and so not as many people knew that they were struggling. For some kids, when there's not the same pressures of school or being in the community, they're not exhibiting the same level of behavior. But for whatever the reason, the amount of kids that we serve went way down. And all of the services that we provide are voluntary, they're free. And right now we can't give them away. I mean, we know that the kids and families are out there needing help, and we really want to make sure that we're getting back out in the communities and hearing about these kids, because we know that COVID had an impact on people's mental health. So that's one thing. And the other thing is our workforce. I know it's a national crisis, so I'm not going to say that nobody, here thought of, but we really, really are trying to figure out how we can get more people to go into behavioral health, and specifically to work with the population that we are working with. And then maybe dear to my heart, and probably Clarence too, is how can we get more representation in the behavioral health workforce so that the people in our communities see themselves or people who look familiar to them in the people who are providing mental health services, so that making the services accessible, I think, is part of it, but we're also trying to make them acceptable. Like, is this something that we believe could work? Is this something that's going to bring about meaningful change? So I would say those are probably the biggest things that we're working on.
Good.
Yeah.
What happened?
The end.
So this is like after the fact. So we just wanted to see how good you do at freaking.
He was a behaviorist. I get it. I like it.
Share this with Dr.
Now we're official.
Yeah, so you got the state service. I used to work for child and mental health division. I used to work for adult mental health division, and so it's kind of like the safety net. And yeah, services are free, but then you got to be eligible. And so thank goodness for providers who are in the community. And so I turn it over to Dr. Clarence Kelo.
Aloha. Hi, everyone. First of all, I have to say I feel so honored to be sitting on this panel because these are my favorite people. Everyone doing really important work. So I come from a company that, or an organization, clinic that has many names. So some people know us as Five Mountains, Hawai'i, which is an organization that was started by John DeFries had talked about him a couple of times this morning, Dr. Earl Bakken. When Dr. Bakken was thinking of dissolving the company, he and I had gotten to be friends, and he said, hey, you want this little nonprofit? And I was like, yes. So our overarching company is Five Mountains, Hawai'i, and the name of our clinic is Kipuka Okeola. And we are a rural health clinic, so federally qualified rural health clinic. And we currently do a medical home model or integrated care. So it is, we started off, our very humble beginnings was only mental health. So then we had psychologists and hired a psychiatrist, and over time started to add primary care, indigenous medicine, So we had La'au and Lomi. And then, let's see. I think the most important thing to know about our organization is that we are grassroots. And let me try and explain how this happened. So I'm a homesteader. I live in Hawaiian homestead. I have pipi, I have cattle, horses up in Waimea. So I sat on the Hawaiian Homestead Association board in my community in Hawaii. And we did a survey to find out what did our homesteaders feel, what was the services that they needed in Waimea. And so one of the top 3 services that they identified was healthcare, mental health, that had a focus on health disparities that are commonly associated with Native Hawaiians. So we put together, I kind of went up to the president and said, hey, I'll accept that kuleana. Had no idea what I was getting myself into, and if I ever was asked to do it again, would never. Crazy. But our organization is led, our board is 100% Department of Hawaiian Homeland's beneficiaries. Our employees that work in our clinic, we really try to look at the population demographic, how much of us are Hawaiian, how much of us are Filipino, and then we try to hire based on that population demographic, including our providers, so that when our patients walk in, you see all of us. We're all there. And we are sitting in both professional roles as well as support roles. If you need to wait, most of the time what walks in the door is people who don't believe that that is how we practice. And in a couple of sentences, feel very comfortable walking in our doors and kind of feeling the ano and the presence and the spirit of the work that we do. I think one of the the things that make us unique or make us special is that very quickly you get the sense that our providers are all talking to each other, working together. So what does that mean? How does that look in real time, right? So I think a lot of times we have conversations that are big and talking about kind of grandiose topics. But our conversations are real. They're about one patient that has physical needs, mental health needs, as well as social disparities. And so when we are addressing our patient conversations, we're addressing all of that. I think once I had a conversation with Kimo and shared with him that we had applied for an Office of Hawaiian Affairs grant. And one of our objectives was to provide an alternative to pain management. So talk stories with all of our, we have 3 primary care providers. Talk stories with our primary care providers and made a commitment to transitioning the patients that we had that were on opiates over to Lomi and La'au. We were pretty successful at it. I think we had, so Franco, who's sitting in the back, who's also Katie's husband, actually did the final report. How much patients did we actually run through that program?
I'm working at home now.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know. I want to say 380 to the psychiatry and traditional,
Yeah, so we moved them through psychiatry, through behavioral health, and then on to Lomi and La'au, acupuncture, and got them off of opioids. And I think at the time we may have been one of the very few clinics that were actually trying to address it through that lens. So I think what has made us unique and different is that our governance, as well as our leadership, is very much present at the level of meeting the need of our community. And when we talk about community-based health, it really is kind of at the very essence of what we do. We are planning, the way we look at chronic care conditions is always through the lens of the health disparities most commonly associated with Native Hawaiians. When we look at mental health, we're also taking that into consideration. How is it that you are providing interventions that are culturally appropriate, culturally based? And I'm actually born and raised in Honolulu, so my pidgin is like impeccable. And that's an immediate joy. It's an immediate joy because you cannot out pigeon me, I promise. And I think the quality in which we take our work seriously, we are able to target and not. So I had a mentor say to me that there's a difference between fishing for a specific species, right? Your lure, your bait, everything is, you're going fishing for that fish, right? Whether it's Oama or whatever. Or you're gonna throw the net and whatever ends up in your net is what you get. So I feel like for us, we're interested in fishing for specific fish. And I feel that we have, I wouldn't say that we're a good fit for everyone, but we are a good fit for many. And that spirit comes across in when you just walk into the door. So, mahalo nui for your time.
Yeah, so Dr. Kevin is going to be getting in front and doing a dance. What are we going to do?
Yeah. I do better standing up, and Kimo, you better keep track of the time.
Okay.
Did you say 35 minutes, did you say?
10, 15, but I gotta tell you, this is the connection, right? So we start off with state, and we go mental health, then we go substance abuse, right? I mean, or addiction. And addiction transcends culture. We know that, right? Addiction transcends community, transcends everything. And we have an addiction issue in our country, and it's now most definitely in our state. So, Dr. Kevin, take it away.
Thank you, Kimo. Yeah, before I get started, I just want to say that I hope that you do like I will on the way home and think of Kahu Akaka and his well-being. So 55 years ago, I, fresh back from Vietnam to Hawaii, decided to stay, joined the track team, and who was there but Danny? And Danny and I became friends. And through the years, we've stayed in touch. And just before the event started today, he and I were talking in the back, and he was saying, don't you wish we could still run like we used to? And the one thing about Danny that really, he had it this morning, he's always had it. When he was with you, it was eye to eye, soul to soul. I care about you, I acknowledge you, I respect you, all at once. No matter who you were, that just lifts you up. And it reminds me that that's how we should always treat each other. So I'm wishing him the best today. The Hawaii Island Fentanyl Task Force started 2 years ago next month. And it started because those pictures that are on our table out there, one of them is by a young woman, 16 years old, Lily Coy. And Lily Coy was using another substance that was laced with fentanyl, and she died instantly. Unintentional fentanyl poisoning. And in the clinic where I was working, the west side of Hawaii Island Community Health Clinic, she wasn't our patient, but we heard about this through the community. And Dr. Catherine May and Alyssa and Uncle Wally Lau and I said, what are we gonna do? We've been seeing fentanyl, we've been used to overdose. We were treating lots of addiction to all drugs that we're familiar with. And we said, how could this be? A 14-year-old. And we said, let's call the mayor, tell him to do something. So we called the mayor, and he said he'd meet with us. And he met with us the day before Thanksgiving, about 10 days after that young woman died. And we said, what are we going to tell him? We're going to tell him it's a crisis, and we've seen it coming from the continent, and it's coming here, and we just can't take it anymore. And we wanted to have an ask. So he said, would you join with us in sponsoring a task force and the first annual fentanyl summit? And he said yes, and so that got us born. So we had a summit in February of 2022. And then we were very fortunate to have Dr. Kimo Alameda come on board as a temporary assignment with us. And Kimo took us up to a new level. Over 400 presentations to schools, school children, from grade schools through high school, to community groups, to Kapuna, and started spreading the word. And our mission became, and let me tell you before telling you our mission, I don't have to tell those of you in this room, but between the ages of 18 and 45, the leading causes of death are number 1, drugs and drug overdose, and number 2, suicide. So the majority of those age groups between 18 and 45. So we know we have a crisis of the soul. You can say mental health in your pocket, but it's really of the soul. And I don't know how many times I'm going, how can we explain this? We had a patient about 2 years ago. He said, I know what's wrong with me. He had every type of problem, suicidality, drugs. He said, I didn't get enough love. At any rate, so Kimo came on, we got more active in the task force, and our goal became not treatment, not harm reduction, not stopping the flow of substances into our community. That wasn't going to be our goal. And why wouldn't that be our goal? We support those things because across the state and across the United States, only less than 15% of illicit drugs coming through our borders are confiscated. 85% are generally more. And every law enforcement person at every level will tell you that that is so. We need each pill to be confiscated. We need each one taken that saves a life. But that alone is not going to solve this problem, as it has not for 50 years. And the other side of it, treatment, harm reduction, recovery support. The truth is that in America, only 11 or 12% of people that need treatment for addiction get it. Yes, they don't want it today. Okay. They might want it tomorrow and it's not there. So no matter how much treatment we have available, it'll never be enough. We've got to stop the pipeline. And that pipeline is our youth, because addiction is a pediatric illness. 95% of adults with addiction started using some drug before the age of 25. 90% before the age of 21. So if a young person can delay drug use, their chances are they'll be getting off on baseball or social media or relationships or school and not on drugs. So drugs of addiction, in the 30 years I've been doing this work, I've been waiting, but it's never happened. Somebody comes in that's addicted to Gatorade and Spam. I like Spam. But people don't get addicted to it. They don't get addicted to it because it's not in there a chemical that mimics or modifies the brain's own neurotransmitter. So if I ask you, would you rather run a marathon and get an endorphin high, or would you like to take this Vicodin here? Because it goes to the same place in the brain. So what we know is that developing brain, youthful developing brain, until about the age of 25, is susceptible to these outside exogenous neurotransmitters and sets and etches tracks for them that's always going to be better than mom's cooking. That's always going to be better than another inning of baseball practice. So if we can delay the use of substances. What happened when Lilikoi died was an unintentional fentanyl poisoning. And so today, when I grew up, there were buds and suds. Yeah, there was a few other things here and there, but kids would experiment. They'd go smoke a joint, they'd have a beer. Kids still do that. Today, about 10 years ago, the most common, first, quote, abused drug in high schools in America went from Pakalolo to Vicodin. So pain pills became very popular. So now there's all kinds of pills. There's Adderall, there's Xanax, there's pain pills, OxyContin, etc. Well, what's happening today is children experiment with those because it's just not buds and suds anymore. Even with the buds, the cannabis, they're taking a risk. Is that there are fake pills. This fentanyl is in everything. It is the most economically beneficial business you could ever be in. And that you lose a few people along the way does not matter to the cartels that start this and those mostly Americans that bring it across the border and into our state. So we can blame the Chinese and we can blame the Mexicans, but we're a part of this. So we know that there'll never be enough treatment. We will never be able to get these drugs stopped from coming in. So we have one avenue left, and that's what the task force is about. It's about empowering our community, making our community aware that this is a problem that exists, that we can do something about, and we cannot wait for it to trickle down from government. We have to trickle this up. So we're a volunteer coalition, and we know that if we can get the word out, thank you, Chemo, Dr. Chemo, if we can push out more Narcan, not that we would ever use it, and that's a little billboard to make you think about, what's this for? Why is this so important? It's because 1 out of every 30 deaths in America today is a fentanyl overdose. Hawaii is catching up quickly. It's the 4th fastest growing accelerated methamphetamine and fentanyl deaths in the country. So we're catching up to what happened on the continent. So our goal is to do awareness. That's why we're here, that's why we have tables. To awareness, to be education, to bring this home. And you know, death is a crude measure of health. And if I tell you 40 people died of an overdose on this island last year, only doubled from the 19 in 2019, doubled, it's gonna double again, we know, within a year or two. That, you know, death is a crude measure of health. Most of the folks that have this problem, at the very basic level, the unintentional overdoses are those that are experimenting heavily with other drugs. There wasn't an awareness in their family, they were educated, or perhaps they weren't loved enough. So part of our job is to get the word out that this is a condition that's preventable, and prevention is really the only answer. We've been doing interdiction for 50 years. We've been doing treatment and building the workforce. That will never keep this away. Overdose deaths have only gone up exponentially over the last 40 years. Today it's this, tomorrow it's cocaine, next time it's methamphetamine, now it's opiates, now it's fentanyl, now it's fentanyl and methamphetamine or cocaine. The only way we can stop this is get in front of it. So our job, and why we're here, and we hope that you will join in our campaign, is to make folks aware. So when you leave today, take a handful of brochures from us, take all the Narcan you can. I want to thank everybody who's been involved with this. I must say that we hit a hard point a little while ago. We've had virtually no money, about $13,000 that was left over from a summit from sponsors. And we had no way of getting money because we weren't a nonprofit. So we're really blessed that Dr. Hannah and BISAC brought us under their umbrella so that we can be part of the receiving end as well as the giving end. So, Dr. May, Dr. Chemo, and all of you that have been part of this. And last but not least, I want to say to each of you, if no one's told you they love you today, I do.
It's hard not to love, right? Like the living Santa Claus. So true. Again, Dr. Hannah, thank you again for taking the task force under your umbrella. And so, yeah, so you see how mental health and substance abuse, I mean, addiction is just so connected, right? We cannot talk about one another on this. Dr. Hannah?
Okay, so I'm a little out of the box, everyone.
Yeah.
Took off my slippers, my jacket. I'll give a little bit of an introduction about myself. My name is Hannah Preston Pizza, and I'm born and raised in a small town on the North Shore on Oahu, Ha'ula. Anybody know Ha'ula? Come on, say it now. Yes, right? And so very similar to some of the towns that we have here. And people often ask me, why did you get involved with substance? And it wasn't like I woke up one day and I said, I want to be a substance abuse counselor. Little did I know that in my life and my journey, it was catching up with me that at every single pivotal point in my life, addiction was there. Whether or not I was at family parties, there was a smoking tent, we all know that, right? It was so normalized in our society, whether or not it was people within my own ohana, whether or not it was people, my own children, addiction. It kept on following me, and so I thought to myself, like, instead of running from it, I'm gonna join forces with it. And so I've been in this field for about, this is gonna date me, So Dr. Kealoha and I went to school together, but in the field of addiction for nearly 20 years. And so, you know, I gotta love it, right? Because, you know, it's a hard field to stick in and stick with. It's not the most sexiest thing to do. It isn't. When I say that I work in it, you're like, oh, poor thing. That's what I say. And I think my pigeon probably can match up to your pigeon. I can turn off and burn. So, talking about the Big Island Substance Abuse Council. So obviously, how did I end up in Hilo, right? It was a part of my journey where I needed to be here. For some reason, I knew that I needed to be in Hilo. So I made my way over to Hilo, and I decided to serve on the Substance Abuse Board. And so I started off on Oahu, served on the BISAC board, fell in love with the organization. To be honest with you, never made it to the Big Island. And I knew that I needed to be here. So that speaks volumes about this place and where I plan on living out the rest of my life. And so when I landed in Hilo, the CEO previous to me was like, hey, we do traditional addiction for whatever that means, right? So it's basically Western models of addiction, and they work, they do. But you're treating our people here. So sometimes there was a disconnect. So I would borrow a little bit of that, and when I took over the helm, it was like really looking at, since majority of the people that enter treatment, about 64% are what? Native Hawaiians. 64%. I mean, we want to be number one, right, in everything, but not in that. And so when I started to look at that, I'm like, these models are working, but we need something else to really sort of enhance the treatment that we provided. And so over the course of 13 years that I've been with the agency, it was thinking about rebuilding from bottom up, like what do we need to do in order to reach the masses? And it was not only looking at traditional models, but looking at cultural practices, like what Dr. Claren Baudet said, is meeting them where they're at. And so it was introducing the mala into it. It was bringing in cultural practitioners, because even if I'm Native Hawaiian, I still needed someone that was skilled enough, a kupuna, to bring that to life and to really address all of those underlying issues. So coming on board, we started to look at like what are the addiction or the drug of choice. So you're thinking like fentanyl, like I always say this, it's still number one ice, methamphetamine, for the last 20 years. And this is amongst not only our adult population, but also for our adolescent population. Then it goes to pakalolo, marijuana. And then what do you think is next? Right below it, alcohol. And then heroin, a very small bit. But what we're starting to see is even if this is the drug of choice for people, they're reporting that it's being laced, right? They call it the bad batch. When they're getting these things, it's laced with fentanyl, and it's becoming very deadly. So as an agency, what we decided to do, like if you're coming from a traditional model of addiction, it's a full abstinence, right? And sometimes that works. But the approach that we like to take is we got to meet them where they're at. So when individuals are coming in, obviously it's full abstinence. You know, we want to really get them off and start to work themselves on all of the underlying issues. But it's also really introducing this idea that when they leave treatment or they transition out, every single individual that leaves our treatment gets trained on Narcan and administering, and they get Narcan when they leave. Because we know that if they leave, the chances are they could go back, right? We know that. That's the nature of the business. Another thing that we decided to incorporate, which I, like what Dr. Kealoha was saying, like, if I knew about it before, I wouldn't have done it, you know? But we decided about 4 years ago to become a complete smoke-free facility. So for those of you that work in the addiction field, you totally know that those things go hand in hand. And so the responses that we got was like, this lady, she's popule. She's crazy, it's not gonna work. And I still get that backlash from other treatment providers, like, it's not happening. And I said, really, it's been 4 years. We have our problems, but it's working. We know by research that if you are able to address both issues, the success rate for them remaining abstinent is much higher. So we've seen those types of things. So when I'm saying that I'm not the person that sort of performs in the box, I'm the one that dances around the box, right? That starts to experiment with these things and figure out what works. I'm gonna do it because I wanna make sure that I give the individuals that we serve the best care possible. Another thing that we are working on right now that I'm very excited is that the first thing that I was told on this island was, hey, you guys gonna open up a detox clinic? And I was like, no. I was like, I don't know, I'm not medical, I'm not this. But we learned and we found out that we needed it here, some level or another. So I'm happy to say that starting in January of this year, we're gonna do a hybrid in Hilo, right? We're still working on county, hint. We're still working on the zoning issues for the building that we have selected. But we're gonna do one form or another of a social detox to get individuals off. Yes, I'm a little slow. I'm really happy to say that detox and culture are gonna go hand in hand. So when you're hearing how La'alapa'au works, right? Lomi works, acupuncture works, that's gonna be a part of our detox approach. Is making sure that when they're doing that, the sleep and the eating, right? And the taking care of them, that we're also removing the toxins with Lomi, and all of those things and making sure that that happens. So I wanna just leave you with this, is, I always get, how can you work with those people? They're my people, I always say that, I finish it off. Even if I'm not in recovery, I still consider that's my people. So if we could just put that message out there that they are like us. They are. They're your mom, they could be your dad, they could be your grandfather, they could be your son. It doesn't discriminate in my family, it's in my family too. Lead with the heart, right? Love on them, believe in them, and remove the stigma. Thank you.
Awesome. So we get a lot of time now to talk story, debrief a little bit, some notes I took, just to start us off. Mental health, substance abuse, which we're trying to move towards substance use disorder, so that's kind of caught me back there. It's very hard. There is stigma within our own profession. We don't say you Big Mac abuser. Although that could be me, but for somebody with obesity, right? But so language is something that we all trying to figure out and trying to work on and remind ourselves on. So that's the first thing. Second is, so thank goodness for the state too, right? So it's a safety net, and so there's a lot of folks I know that their kids benefit from the case management and the wraparound services that the state provide. But that's a small number. So then thank goodness for our outpatient folks, community health centers, and COCO, rural health clinics. Those are just critical, nonprofits. And then there's agencies that just zero in on addictions with mental health, therapists and such, because it all kind of comes together. And then there's the integrative health, because physically, what's interesting is this occurred to me when I was driving here. It's like we all went to school for something, right? So like we're so specialized, right? So you gotta go to school for this. Okay. And then you gotta go to school for this. And so our educational system forces us to like be very siloed. So when we come out, we're like, oh, this must be the problem. In other countries, indigenous cultures, they don't go to school for this. Everything's connected. And so their degree is in big picture. But our degree is very siloed. And so I think, moving towards this idea also of social determinants of health and how that can get under somebody's skin and get that stress, that toxic stress, can get them to isolate, maybe experiment with substances. It all comes together. So I also wanted to mention, we could have a panelist on our self-help groups because they are the savior, I think. Our self-help groups, there's evidence that it's probably one of the strongest evidence around addictions to help folks stay in recovery. So hats off, anybody in here, self-help groups, just can I get a big round of applause to our self-help groups? And so, we can talk a little bit about that too, but that's some of the thoughts that I had sitting back there. So we'll open it up now for thoughts on this side, questions, comments, and then we're just gonna like take turns from this side and that side. How's that? So anybody this side, thoughts, a comment? Oh, yeah.
Submitting.
Oh, there's a way to submit.
I was spinning too.
Yeah, no, there is a way to submit. But I didn't want to mess with it, so you just tell us. Yeah, this is it. I mean, if it wasn't like a big 300 people, but it's only us. You guys can fit in my house.
I know, me too.
Okay,
Here you go.
what did I say to you? I was asking about the referral system, because you were saying, of course, you need parental consent, of course we need consent. So, but you said you can apply. So, what if I'm a teacher, a family member, a concerned neighbor, or somebody, right? Can you apply, and then do you have someone who does some kind of, like, reach out to parents? No?
Yeah, yes, that does happen sometimes. I think that the best way, so anyone, you know, if you were to go to our website and click on, you know, applying, anyone can submit an application, and as long as we have a contact information, you know, name and phone number for a parent, we'll call the parent and talk to them about it. But your face tells the whole story, right? Cold calling a parent, first of all, when we call you, what comes up on your caller ID is Hawaii state government. That is not a phone call that often gets picked up. And then to say like, oh, somebody, you know, put it, like it just doesn't go well, almost never. Yeah, almost never. And so what a lot of, like for example, teachers, which is the example that you gave, what a lot of folks will do is talk to the family about, you know, I know about this resource, or, you know, it seems like you're having a hard time. I actually heard about this resource. We can look at the website together, or the application itself is very simple. It's mostly demographic information, because we will we'll do the mental health assessment or the, you know, whatever needs to be done. We really just want to make contact with the child and family and see what they need and see if they're eligible. So if there's a way for the concerned person to be that bridge and talk to the family about, you know, there's these free services. I don't know if you guys would qualify for it, but maybe we can do the application together, or maybe we can look at the website together. That much more often will result in, you know, a positive outcome.
Comes back to your relationships.
Absolutely.
And trust.
Absolutely.
So Richard Tapp was talking about how they're going to have a presence in the schools and have clinics in the schools. And so is that an avenue? And then also I've been seeing these signs about Hazel. And I'm just wondering about both of these things.
So the Department of Education, we obviously work with the Department of Education quite a bit. For a long time, they were our eyes and ears, because they see almost every kid in the state. And they have significantly built up their own behavioral health infrastructure. So they have school-based behavioral health specialists on every campus. They also have this contract with Hazel Health, which is a telehealth company that offers services that families can access. And so the way, so to back up, this is now, I'm gonna date myself, since apparently that's a thing that we're all doing. So, you know, Kimo mentioned coming up through the ranks, right? So a long time ago, child and adolescent mental health wasn't really a thing. Not everyone believed that that was a thing. And so we weren't our own division. It was sort of a part of the adult mental health division, and it was very, very small. I think with the Felix consent decree, which was a class action lawsuit that was brought against the state, it really opened up child and adolescent mental health in the state. And for the first time ever, it was something that got funded by the legislature and really invested in, to the point where Hawaii unbelievably built actually one of the better systems in the country, was being kind of held up as a model. So during that evolution, the Department of Education and the Department of Health were in that class action lawsuit together. So kind of fast forwarding, we came into compliance with the consent decree. I started as a care coordinator during that time, and then, you know, sort of have been with CAMD ever since. How it's evolved now is what the Department of Education calls a tiered system. So they identify the students that need support in school, and they actually have the infrastructure to provide it right through all these partnerships and contracts. But sometimes a student needs more than what they can provide just on that sort of outpatient basis. And then I think that's where we come in. So all of those sort of outpatient services or things that can be delivered right in the school, those kind of moved away. There was a time where we used to do that, but that sort of moved away and moved into the Department of Education, and then tiers 4 and 5, which is meaningless, is actually where we come into play, which is those much more intensive, like in the home with the families or out of home treatments.
I can add to that. So I was, back in the day, I helped create the tiers.
He was old too.
Yeah, so it's called a comprehensive student support system. So like if a child is acting out behaviorally, teacher, tier 1. You know, child, teacher getting a hard time, shucks, counselor, tier 2. But I was a school counselor. And back in the day, school counselor was supposed to be like, you know, everything. And so that was real tough, especially when you're trying to do just like college planning. So then, you know, Felix Consent Decree, they created tier 3, school-based behavioral health. Oh, and also now I get therapists in the schools. You know, prior to that, therapists would come into the schools. And then once they're at 4 or 5, that's like a referral to the Department of Health, that's high level care. But then there's community health centers that can also kind of feed into it. So this is what Richard was talking about, that they can provide support to the behavioral health therapists and kind of like almost like be a 3.5 or something, you know, which is kind of what's happening now.
Because we all know like, a lot of the trauma is it's generational and it's fake. It starts to identify it, but if the issue is actually in the home setting, right, that needs more.
No, for sure, and yeah, so I'm glad you started off with children because, you know, I mean, the trauma is real. Trauma is real. Yeah, and then your questions, it is real, and so yeah, it does progress. Although I have talked to folks that great childhood, and then they went to college and they got addicted because they tried it and they liked it. And you know, with addiction, you go from I like it to I want it to I need it, and that can happen very quickly. So thank you for your question. How about this question? Yes, go.
So I kind of this earlier, so fair, how I worded it, but dual diagnosis, how did each of you kind of handle dual diagnosis? Because I work with the adult mental health division for mental health KUKUA, and clearly resources for dual diagnosis is very many. So can I get a little information from each one of you?
So thoughts on, right, so here, like co-occurring disorders, dual diagnosis, you know, I mean, that's, and I'm beginning to think it, you know, there's tri-diagnosis, even, multiple diagnoses. So like, what's your thoughts on that? We'll start with the kid.
Well, it reminds me of 15 and 20 years ago, I was doing addiction medicine, and parents would bring a child in, usually 30 or under, and say they're just not themselves. We think they're using that ice stuff that's around. And so methamphetamine mimics psychosis. It can look like the psychosis of bipolar disease, schizophrenia, and
vice versa.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
So in fact, the medications for psychosis were developed by giving people methamphetamine and then treating their psychosis that was methamphetamine induced. So that's how Janssen came up with Thorazine and stuff like that. So I think what's clear is that you have to treat both simultaneously. Certainly if you're trying to do any level of mental health, behavioral health counseling on someone, choosing any substance that's mind altering. And quite frankly, there's enough Seroquel and every gabapentin and everything else on the street. So you've got to clean that up. You've got to find a medical provider that actually understands how the brain works and how all these drugs, whether it's prescribed, bought from the street or prescribed by an eminent psychiatrist, is also going to change the brain in ways you don't know. It's not just weight gain and this and that. So it's complex, but you've got to treat it both at once. Certainly, the person that's using drugs, that has to cease. I mean, they can say, well, I used to do all this stuff, and now I'm just doing the Xanax that my Dr. X over here gives me. Well, good luck with that. It's just not going to work out. They're not going to get that repair of the soul. The light will not be able to come back on, the candle will not glow as much. And vice versa, you have to treat serious mental illness. And sometimes it's overdiagnosed by practitioners that can give you a drug for it, out of my office or some whatever. So it's really delicate. I think it takes a team approach. I think one of the beauties of federally qualified health centers, especially here on this island, is that that's an integrated team. There is not just a warm handoff, there's a come on in the room with me. And my 4 or 5 years at Hawai'i Island Community Health Center, I had a social worker in the room. Dr. May was down the hall. There was always someone available, and 85% of patients needed a little of both. And these were addiction patients primarily, but they needed a little of both. So treat them both at once would be my answer.
Agreed.
Satisfied with that?
Yeah,
But
I
what does-
think the bigger issues are maybe we're the smart people that know that.
Well, that's good.
And maybe getting that more in the community, so you aren't having so much resistance and trying to treat both at the same time.
Okay, this is for icing on the cake. You can go ahead.
Icing on the cake. So I think the way that I like to approach addiction too is that it's a symptom of what's really going on. You know what I mean? Really look at the disorder, and for majority of the clients that we served, dual diagnosis, regardless.
Mm.
And so it's mandatory for them not only to get substance, they have to do therapy with a mental health therapist as well.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think oftentimes to show the correlation between mental health and physical health is that we'll get someone in clinic that is coming in for diabetes. And very quickly we find out that it has much more to do with heart disease because they're also using meth. Right? And so at that point in time, now we have a primary care doc that is addressing the diabetes, and we have a psychiatrist that can prescribe medication if that's what they need. And then we're also doing at the same time the substance abuse treatment and addressing core issues like childhood abuse. And then as we address that, we team and we talk with each other and make sure that, I think one of my pet peeves is that I absolutely want to see behavior change. And so moving, propelling, they have to be moving, actively moving toward something that is better than the way we've got them in order for me to feel successful in any kind of way. And so I do think that dual diagnosis is going to be addressed by the various teams that are trying to address the issue.
Awesome.
Yeah, in our system, we have in-home services, and then we have out-of-home services for kids who just need to be removed, go to a treatment facility. For the in-home services, we use multi-systemic treatment, which is sort of the idea that behaviors don't happen in a vacuum, including substance use behaviors. And so it's really a way of looking at the system that a child is in, their community, their family, their school, and helping the system to understand what is driving that behavior and how everyone can support the youth in changing that behavior. For kids who need residential treatment, we do have a contract with the Bobby Benson Center, which is on Oahu only. We don't have any residential facilities on any of the neighbor islands. And that program is, just for that residential treatment. And then when they're piled with that and return back to their homes, then we're providing supportive services so that they can generalize some of the gains that they make.
Nice. This side.
Thank you for joining us today to answer questions. I live in Eagle, and I have friends and family who have been on the street for a long time. We see them every day, they struggle, and sometimes we feel that they need them. How do we intervene as family members, friends, without taking away their personal liberties? I know there's guardianship laws going through the courts now. How do we intervene before they die?
Yeah, that's the saddest thing, to drive around town and you see your cousin talking to themselves, or you try to help them and then like helps. Anybody? That's the type of animal. It-
We
it-
could ask that all.
Yeah.
Um,
And you know why it's hard too, because I think it hits home. I think what attracts us to this field is it's in our families, our cousins, relatives, us even, went through our own struggles, you know. So
How do you help people who don't want to help get help?
yeah,
They just want to, I think it's just so
So what I would recommend is making a connection and building a little trust back and forth. And it could start with you bringing a can of soda, you know.
Yeah, that's exactly what we.
Yeah, you start slow and steady and you keep working your way up to that trust and they start to hopefully believe in the things that you're saying. Like, you love them, I believe in you, and I'm here for you and I wanna help you. What do you need? Start there and then, you know, do you trust me enough to tell you this is what you need? That's what I would say.
no, that's good, and I think we all would say that.
Yeah.
So I think what happens after that? I think that's the question, because I know you're doing that already. I know you've done that. So what is after that? Right? What is after that? What is after that? Yeah.
But I don't mean to take over and have an ad or anything, but there's a number of us here that are familiar with or part of NAMI, the National
Yes.
Alliance on Mental Illness. And this is a very common problem, and we have free programs where we help family members figure out how to do that, what skills to learn and how to do it. But it really takes a lot more than that. So I've been very inspired about what you've shared with us about your model for just saying, look, this is a big problem and we have to come together and do it. And I think the truth is we have to do the same thing for mental health because it does seem to be a bit siloed. I mean, most of our families, they have both problems.
Yeah.
And, you know, so it doesn't make a lot of sense. Both are in the DSM-5 TR, so what are we worried about?
Right.
You know, but there are, you know, not only does the family have to change and the person, of course, as well, but I think there's a lot of societal change that's needed as well. And we've been lucky to be working with the mayor's office through Tim, you know, and that's what we see as a crisis services. As you can see, I'm wearing this pin here, reimagine crisis services, because that's what has to happen. And hopefully younger, even with the youth, to start early and do interventions. We've changed some of the laws to try to make it easier. Danger to self for others also includes inability to be able to make careful decisions about your own health care. But unfortunately, we're having problems of getting that implemented because of the lack of psychiatrists. It comes back to the workforce thing again. So I think we have to work hard together on all of those issues at once to make it work.
And I think home services is a good resource because they're going out too.
I'm just gonna say, I'm representing both
Yeah.
Kalani and we have two other colleagues, Ryan and Alexis in the back, we're all from Boone. And we are integrating services. They've introduced, we've had behavioral health for a while now and introduced the medical. And then trying to form that interdisciplinary team so that they can develop those connections at all the different levels and then provide comprehensive services. So, yeah, thank you everybody for your support.
No, that's all good. Thank you. Mental America, Hope Services. That's a really good question. I mean, in our own family, right, my two brothers are addicted. So my mom asked that same question. How come they don't like help? How come they don't like help? You know, and so that's why there's programs.
And then we also never give up, so our
Yeah.
people are.
Yeah. So never give up. I mean, there's Al-Anon and Alateen.
Teen Challenge.
Yeah, you know, for us as the caregiver, right? So, and like Dr. Kevin said, you know, they might not like it today, but they might like it tomorrow. And so whenever they might like it, that's when you like be ready to give it, right? So I think we just gotta keep loving on them and something maybe with the divine and something just the stars all get in alignment and boom, I want help. We should be there. Yeah, we should be there. Okay, I can jump on this side. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, Clark Spain, Home Services. Anyway, I got a question for you, Kaylee. Just thinking about the ACE scores, the adverse in childhood experiences, right? And they correlate with all these other things, mental illness, substance abuse, eating disorder, all these things, right? And so I'm just wondering if there's a way, right, that we could intervene early because when we're intervening, they already got an issue, right? But you know, if these things are happening to you, there's gonna be an issue, maybe down here, you know? And I'm just wondering if there's a way that we could intervene then when there isn't this, but we know that the experiences are happening and we give them the service that they need at that time. Again, it's looking at the family, it's kind of invasive. I imagine it's really difficult.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I think you're hitting on something really important because you can even see as we become more aware of how those adverse childhood experiences impact your physical health, your mental health, your mortality rate, you know, pretty fundamental, right? Risk behaviors, all of that. I think it's even changed the way behavioral health providers conceptualize problems. Like I can say just in the time that I've been in the field, when I first started working for the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Division, every teen that was referred to as had oppositional defiant behavior, conduct disorder, you know, all like willful misconduct, those kinds of things, right? And I think as we get more educated, we're learning that these are kids that have been traumatized, they are depressed, they're anxious, and yes, it looks like aggression, and it looks like risk-taking, and it looks like all of these things, but truly, they're trying to cope with this trauma history, right? And so it's a great question. I do think that there's I was just talking about this the other day, like we put so much focus on health care when most of what drives our health outcomes happens long before healthcare, right? It's all those social determinants of health. It's, do you have housing? Do you have, for our kids, do you have a loving family? You know, there's all kinds of things that could be protective early on, and I think the more aware we become of A, how much some of those things have deteriorated with modern life, but B, how actually hopeful it is when you understand that what humans need is much more fundamental than, you know, primary care services or mental health services or whatever, that there's a lot that could be really protective very early on. I don't know the answer to your question, obviously, but I do think that the more awareness and education that people have about that, because even in adults, you know, you can see the impact of their trauma histories, you know, in their later life. And if I could just say something about the voluntary nature of mental health services, because that comes up a lot in our system, right? Kids are not the boss of their lives. Their parents decide what they get signed up to do or what they do. Kalani knows this, he's worked with a lot of our kids. Behavioral health services always have to be voluntary. Behavior change is so hard. For anyone who's ever tried to go on a diet or to get more organized or to whatever, behavior change is so hard. So imagine if you don't even want to do it in the first place. And so a lot of times, or what we see with our kids and teens is they just vote with their feet, right? So you can force them to be in the room, but you can't force them to participate in behavior change.
Engage.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've all been there as providers, you know, right? So, and it's like addictions. I mean, Dr. Kevin shared one time, I was sharing about how my dad was saying, how people are nice, why don't you just quit? You know, and so I asked him, and he said, well, if they just quit, it would be addictions, wouldn't it? Right? If you can just quit, it wouldn't be addictions. So it's an issue, yeah.
I think that's a great issue, the use of ACEs. And I'm always amazed how smart young people are, 4th, 5th, 6th grade even. In the same way that we would like to see schools and health professionals do screening, brief intervention, referral to treatment type models, why not take that list of 10 questions and just let them know it's not normal. You know, a fish that's swimming in polluted water doesn't know that. And so these kids don't know that it's abnormal. So something that just says, this is normal, this is not. And as over the years with various forays into trying to get Department of Education to change the curriculum at each level, it's really hard to do. But that is something that could, again, get way up ahead of the curve, go way upstream. And it gives an opportunity maybe that child bringing that handout home and the parents did, oh God, So it needs to be, the volume of how that could be helpful needs to be.
Might be a way for you guys to have more kids come out. Oh, you got a score of 1. Yeah, you're in. It's even a score of
That's
1.
right.
Get help, right?
That's
50% of marriages end in divorce, and that's one of the questions.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
So you could have more kids.
good.
But it's hard too, right? Like you said, I get the kids, but I look at the kids and parents like pick the kid, like it's not the kids.
That's right.
And if you go back earlier,
That's right.
And
And
people do
because
that.
so many of the kids that we serve are in the child welfare system. So they have families, but they've been removed because of safety issues. You can see for the kids who don't know if they're ever going back to their family or who know that they're not ever going back to their family, there's all the supportive services and mental health services and helpers in the world are only going to move the needle so much, right? Having a loving family or a home base, it's not perfect, but it's your home base and they're in it for the long run. That actually has a huge impact for young people, right? And so it's knowing that we're kind of this one sliver and we're in this sort of soup of all these social determinants. How much can we move the needle? It's kind of everybody has to be all in.
Question?
So in line with that, we are all sliced, and just got another slice from NAMI. It's a teen and youth helpline. It's something kind of new, and I'd love to get it to everyone if you don't have it yet. So, and what strikes me on this one is it's a helpline that is run by peers. So it's other young people, and they're talking about young people. And it's not, maybe even not drug addiction or mental health, but just if they're feeling sad, if they're just feeling lost, they would just like to talk to someone. And they've set up something, and it's a nationwide helpline. So, and people can chat, they can call, they can email. They're making it very user-friendly, I think, for the young people in particular. So I think this is a wonderful resource. Just wanted to
Thank you
share.
so much. I guess if I can plug another resource since we're on that. Hawai'i Cares 988. I don't know if folks have had a chance to check out that website, but it's really, it's a partnership that we're doing with the Adult Mental Health Division, and it's really a great resource, not only for crisis services, but also for all kinds of other behavioral health support. So Hawai'i Cares, it's another good resource to check out.
Yes, Tim?
Department of Health wants to set a priority for the community behavioral health crisis centers. There's one proposed on Oahu. Who knows how many years it will be before it comes to the outer islands. Why or what is it that prevents community healthcare, rural healthcare, other nonprofits or whatever, setting up those sorts of centers, a place where people can go when they're beginning to feel that crisis coming up?
Yeah.
Why is it that we're not making steps forward? Because if we wait for the Department of Health to do it.
Yeah.
Like a walk-in?
Well, yeah, so these CCBHC is the acronym. and it's a-
Anytime, 24/7.
Right.
24 hours.
No age requirement, no eligibility requirement, walk in.
Like an urgent care for mental health.
Kind of, yes.
Yeah.
And actually, the Department of Health got a grant. It's a SAMHSA initiative, I think, and it's pretty prescribed, right? This is what we consider to be a CCBHC. And the first one was going to be on Maui anyway. They had opened a week before, like the very beginning of August, and then the wildfires happened. And so they moved their CCBHC to Lahaina, and it's been kind of a test, I think, right, of this exact model. And I think what's really promising about it is this idea of like, you don't have to know what you need. You don't have to know if you financially meet the criteria, or if you know, like you were saying earlier, like our criteria, there's steps, right? So there is something really, I think, wonderful about this idea that you know that there's a place that you can go and you just walk in and they will help you figure out what you need. You're right, it takes a lot to stand that up, and it is, at least for the funding, or to call yourself a comprehensive community-based health center, or I might probably screen up the acronym. It has to meet certain requirements, right? And so, so while it's a heavy lift, I think it is a really promising model for sure. And folks who want to learn more about it can go to the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services website.
Follow up, because that was actually one of the questions I submitted. So I heard about the Maui CCBHC, and I was wondering, is that like, is there you only allowed to have one in the state, or is the idea that you would have them locally? Like, what would we have to do to create something?
Yeah, well,
like that?
Tim's point is, why wait for the state? Tim's point is maybe a community health center could resurrect it. Maybe it could be an offshoot of a grant or a pilot program that maybe.
Expect the fentanyl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The university would be an incredible spot. I mean, serious.
Let me ask Dr. May, your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Community health center?
Yeah, so I'm the behavioral health director of Hawai'i, and I think that we're already doing that, is the answer, that most of the people that we see often come in a crisis. And that's where integrated behavioral health and primary care really has a place. I think having patient navigators who are available to take patients as they come in, often it's a social determinants of health need, having that connection with the cares line, being able to connect with CCS services, those kind of things. I think that's what the NQHCs are doing already. Obviously, they can't do it after hours, and I think that's the challenge with becoming the CCBHC is that we've got staff who are burnt out, don't want to work through the nights, and then be at work the next day. So, I think we're trying to do it as much as possible, and I think there's room for growth, but I think it is happening to a certain extent. I mean, we get 26,000 calls a month to our health centre, and a lot of them are people in crisis. We have patient navigators who take those calls straight away and offering crisis services over the phone, and really kind of mediating between patients who call in crisis and then getting them to the crisis services, getting them on one call if they need it. So I'd say it is happening. We need more. We need it to happen in more places, but I think they are trying to do it.
There is no limit though on how many CCBHCs
Yeah.
in the state.
Yeah, I'm still trying to understand the difference between the FQHC and the CCBHC and like all the acronyms, but like, it seems like they're different kind of qualifiers and different patient populations perhaps.
And the CCBHC is only behavioral health versus the integrated health clinics that are providing both primary care.
So it's more I think it's more flexible. Like for us at Hawai'i Community Health Center, we want you to be a patient for us for the physical side, because we see, right, like we talked about earlier as an integration, but I think this offers what Tim is mentioning, saying maybe they already have their primary care physician. They're happy with Dr. So-and-so in the community. They just want to clear their head on this. And they don't like make an appointment because that's 6 months out. So there's someplace that can just go to like talk to somebody like that.
Yeah.
And then
And we're training, we're doing CIT, crisis intervention team training with the police. And the police are saying, it's great you're training us on how to better respond to these situations, but then what? We don't have any place to bring these people. And so careful with yours, because I'm gonna check your hours. But really, they're just saying, we see it every day, and we're trying to respond differently. But if there's no place to bring people, then they're going to jail, or they're going to the emergency department, and they're gonna be let out in a couple of hours, and here we go again.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, we're definitely identifying the issues, so again in the 10 minutes.
Sounds like a good outcome.
Yeah, no, this is, and then tomorrow they're gonna get some experts gonna be talking, and probably some of us in here, and kind of going to that next level of recommendations. But let me turn it over to the panel to end us. We'll start where we started with Kaylee. What is, obviously we've been around, we've all been around a long time, and it's been a challenge, it continues to be a challenge, but what is the hope? What is your would you say is the hope for us?
You know, I think a lot of what we've been talking about today is not really seeing behavioral health in a vacuum. It's the hope that it is more of a community approach, that there is a more holistic approach, that our system wasn't quite as siloed as it is now. And, you know, I think what we're seeing like on Maui is a really good example, right? Which is a lot of people want to help, we're getting a lot of grants, we're getting funding to do things, and that's all really, really important. But it's really important for the community to drive what they think this looks like for themselves too, and health is a lot of the same way, right? And we have our ideas and our schooling and our thing of what we want to provide and what we can provide and what the insurance pays for and what, and all these kinds of things. But I think we're really hoping for much more of a partnership and much more of sort of listening to communities and having communities really be able to have a voice and a part in really what it takes overall to have communities be healthier, safer from suicide, more connected. But I think conversations like this are a really important part of it, because as we all learn what each of us is doing to help and what each of us is doing to move things forward, I think it's really both inspiring and makes you optimistic, but it also helps you to know sort of what kind of a net is out there, right, in the community. And so when we're encountering people every day who are looking for help or maybe contemplating getting help or those kinds of things, we know that there's this broader safety net available, for everybody. So I think really that community approach, building relationships, and I think now in a sort of post-COVID time, with people really recognizing how important behavioral health is, and what we can all be doing to take care of our own mental health, behavioral health, to model good health for the people that are around us, and to connect the people that we love with the supports they need. I think that's more important now.
Okay, thank you. So hope, hold on, pain ends. My definition of hope, hold on, pain ends. So the pain of a system that's not working together, right? Hopefully that ends and we can start working more collaborative together. The pain of maybe a child not wanting to get help, and when are they going to be ready to get help? Hope provides us that patience, I think. So, yeah. Dr. Clay, what is your hope?
Yeah, my hope is that I'm really enjoying conversations that are talking about love, talking about spirit, talking about soul. I think oftentimes we spend a lot of time discussing diagnosis and talking about human behavior as if it is something that is external as opposed to internal. And I'm hopeful that more providers use words like "I love you," and that's okay, and we're not going to lose our license. I'll tell you that my patients will tell me I love you when I say I love you. Yeah, we're not supposed to do that, so don't tell. But that is my hope. That is my hope, that we continue conversations that are about spirit.
Thank you.
And aloha.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, Dr. Kevin, top that.
Yeah, I would say that what I feel is that together is better. So if you conceptualize mental illness like substance use, having some defects in the hardware of the brain. And so for some mental illness it's permanent, bipolar, schizophrenia. For others it may be temporary with depression and all, but the brain is changed. And in substance use, the substances change the brain, not just while they're being used, but for a longer term, and then the brain has to come back, like multiple fractures healing in your foot. But we know that the hardware someone can stop using when they could have a serious mental illness like bipolar, that the hardware alone either can't be straightened out or isn't straightened out and will take a while. And so you've got to work on the software. So that's a lot of what behavioral health is. And in addiction, we know for sure that you can't just do stabilizing the hardware. A good example is buprenorphine or Suboxone, which will definitely take away cravings and withdrawal and stabilize a person. But unless you upgrade their software, their way of thinking, their way of behaving, you get nowhere. So I think the models in the federally qualified health clinics and others that mix those together, if not in the same room, very close, so that the patient has the benefit of those two areas of expertise, making sure the hardware is okay and upgrading that software to you can get back to your life. Together is better.
Together is better. Love it. Bam.
I just took all my answers. I don't know, I'm very hopeful. I'm just sitting here listening to everyone to respond and ask these questions that I think we're going in the right direction. This makes me hopeful to look and see that, you know, we continue to love on people, like Dr. Klein said, you know, lead with love and aloha. And then trust or know, right? If you know somebody's wrong, reach out to that person. Because you never know, you might be saving their lives.
Yeah. And it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's okay not to be okay. So thank you, everybody. I mean, you're doing the good work. Please spread the love. Let's give it up to for our panelists again. Enjoy the rest of the day. Aloha.